The Colonial Zone is one of the most famous parts of the city of Santo Domingo. As the area where the Spaniards first established themselves in the New World, the place remains full of culture, forming part of many poets' lives and serving as an inspiration for others.
The Plaza de la Poesía honors the memory of the Dominican poet and teacher Salomé Ureña de Enriquez. A sculpture of her lies in the center of the small park, surrounded by benches where people can sit and reflect. Ureña, along with founding the Instituto de Señoritas, the first institution of higher education for young women in the Dominican Republic, was a prominent figure who fought for equal rights. Her book of poetry, Esteban, was acclaimed, and October 21st was declared as Day of the Poet in her honor. One of her most famous poems is Ofrenda a la Patria.
This is an excerpt of Salomé Ureña's Ofrenda a la Patria.
Hace ya tanto tiempo. Silenciosa, sí. Indiferente, no. Patria bendita, yo he seguido a la lucha fatigosa con que llevas de bien tu ansia infinita.
Gastón Fernando de Ligny Figueroa is a famous Dominican poet. After finishing his studies, he worked as a bookkeeper in a warehouse owned by Aaron Namias, located in the Colonial Zone of Santo Domingo, where he worked for 15 years. One of his characteristics is the great variety of poetic forms and themes in his content. Although his early poetic compositions have romantic, impressionist, and modernist traits, it did not take him long to acquire the original and proper style that characterizes his work, which is marked by the social concern and the unquestionable patriotism that he defended throughout his lifetime. His poem, Ololoy, is a testimony of his personal experiences during the Ulises Herox's dictatorship.
René del Risco Bermúdez was a Dominican poet, narrator, and publicist. He was one of the essential figures in the transition of Dominican literature from the age of Trujillo to the democratizing attempts of the 60s. He writes about the colonial zone in his Viento Frío poems. It pays tribute to the space of the city, narrating the frustration because of the Guerra de Abril's failed result in 1965. He warns with melancholy and sadness that nothing will ever be the same, and that the history of that colonial city and its environment will be changed by future political history.
Alistair Reid was a Scottish poet and scholar. Though notable for his translation of South American authors such as Pablo Neruda, Jorge Luis Borges, his own poems reached fame. He moved frequently, living in Switzerland, Greece, and many other countries including the Dominican Republic. While he lived there, he befriended author and translator Hoyt Rogers. During that time, Hoyt lived on Macorís Street in the Colonial Zone, on the other side of the Dominican convent, and Reid stayed there several times, once living there for 6 weeks. Hoyt allowed him to use his address for legal matters, like a problem he once had with his ginger plantation in Samaná.
Julia Alvarez is an American poet, novelist, and essayist of Dominican descent. She was born in New York, but moved to the Dominican Republic 3 months later, and at the age of 10, returned to the United States, where she now resides. After graduating in philology in 1971, she decided to start her literary career. She made her debut in 1984 with Homecoming, a poetry book, a genre that she has not stopped combining with narrative. She writes in English but deals with all kinds of topics, including identity, where she frequently recalls her childhood in the Dominican Republic. In her poem, On Sundays, she speaks about going to church with her family in the colonial zone. Here's an excerpt of her poem, On Sundays. On Sundays, we would get to choose whom we belong to. The choice disguised as a destination. Either cathedral mass with mommy or the beach with papi. A simple choice.
The members of the Estrambote Literary Circle celebrated the traditional Christmas party with a dinner at the Hotel San Nicolás in the Colonial Zone. Some poets of this literary group are Nitín Troncoso, Ramón Saba, Carlos Tomás Sención, Gaterox, and Diógenes Díaz Torres. This poetry group have gathered to share the knowledge and share about the literary innovations of the moment, meet and discuss about the classical and contemporary poets of the different countries, marking a special interest in the Dominicans. They seek to establish relations with poets from other countries and continents for the purpose of diversifying participation in the world of poetry. A Santa Claus was also present in the meeting, who in addition to his well-known laughter ho ho ho, also chanted the motto of this literary group, as far as poetry takes us.
Pedro Julio Mir Valentin was a Dominican writer, considered the national poet of the Dominican Republic, and declared as so by the National Congress in 1984. He belonged to the generation of independence of the 40s. Although he was born in San Pedro de Macorís, he maintained his literary conversation in the emblematic Renaissance palace of the 16th century, known as Hostal Nicolás d'Obando in the Colonial zone. His most famous poem is Hay un país en el mundo, where he speaks about the beauty of the Dominican Republic. Here is an excerpt of his poem Hay un país en el mundo. Hay un país en el mundo, colocado en el mismo trayecto del sol, oriundo de la noche, colocado en un inverosímil archipiélago de azúcar y de alcohol.
In the plaza that bears the names of this poet and writer, Arturo Pellano Castro, there sat each afternoon the so-called Dominican Byron. The square also has the nickname Parque Rosado for its bright pink paint. He was an outstanding lyric poet, with the themes of his poems being the natives, nature, popular environment, and country life. His work, Don Juan, his most prodigious literary production, is believed to be an autobiography. His poetry was simple and ranges from patriotism, criollismo, and costumbrismo. He is considered as literary pride of the 19th century for Dominicans.
This plaza is also shared by Julia de Burgos, a Puerto Rican poet who is considered by many critics as the most excellent poet of her country. In addition to showing the sentiment of love in her poems, she also stimulated women's liberation. With a rebellious and feminist voice, she wrote works that went against social norms and the conventions of her time. Her work has been emphasized by the feminist uprising her verses express. An example of one of her well-studied works is Yo misma fui mi ruta, or I was my own route, which deals with women's liberation. In this poem, de Burgos is determined to be the one who manages her life.
Pablo Neruda was a combative poet. A part of his poetry was dedicated to social issues, such as war. Of course, he also sang to love, to nature, women, and beauty. His work is vast, and this testifies about 50 titles published in life, in addition to other books that collect his poetic work after he died. To the Dominican Republic, he dedicated his Versainogramma to Santo Domingo, a poem written on the occasion of the military occupation of the United States in 1965, but which is an exposition of the country since Columbus arrived, inspired by the Parque Colonial.
Participation of 37 Dominican writers in an American, the anthology Solo para Locos, or Only for Crazy People, was put into circulation during a recent poetic festival. The anthology is the result of 3 poetic recitals celebrated. The first in the Workshop of Evolutionary and Contemporary Art in the Colonial Zone in July 2012. The second at Pellegrini Vineyards in Long Island, New York last April. And the third in the Bar Salon of Mirrors on May 28th this year. The act was tempered by various artistic activities, including the staging by the actress Rosa Iris Clariot of the poem Solo para Locos by the author of Sol Lara. The Dominican singer-songwriter Susana Silva also interpreted some of the poems contained in the anthology. The event concluded with a tribute by the poets participating in the anthology to Lourdes Batista and José Alejandro Peña, who received a plaque of recognition and a candelabrum allusive to the prevalence of the flame of the Dominican poetic culture.